We waited, we watched, we prayed, we sat on pins and needles, and at the end of the day, I think the College Football Playoff Committee did get it right. It's instant reaction time. If you are new here, welcome on into the channel. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. So if this is the type of content you enjoy, which, by the way, we got coaching searches, we got bowl games ahead, we also got the offseason with the transfer portal, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me if you think the College Football Playoff Committee got it right with the 4 teams in. Tell your friends, your family, your sister, your brother, your mortal enemies, your best of bros, your workout buddy, your entire fraternity, the church congregation, and a drunk, passed out guy in a Publix parking lot about this channel. And as always, let's continue to talk college football. By the way, if you want to give me a follow on social media, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson. It's the exact same as my YouTube channel. So when you hit subscribe here, go on over to X or whatever Elon Musk wants to call it and hit follow there. Thanks in advance. I don't envy the committee. I don't think anybody in America right now is sitting on their hands and saying, I want to be in that room in Grapevine, Texas, making this decision. Because there really was no right answer. There's no justification to where we can sit down and actually look at the numbers and say X team belongs in and Y team doesn't. Every team had an argument to make it to the CFP. Texas, they dismantled Alabama in week 2 in Tuscaloosa. That's an argument. But Alabama found a way to recover, regroup, and retaliate and punch their ticket to another SEC title championship. And then you look at Florida State. Florida State did its job. They went undefeated. They handled business against everybody. And yes, they lost Jordan Travis, and it was a travesty. Nobody wants to see this in college football. And especially late in the season, when momentum is at an all-time high, your team is clicking on all cylinders, you feel like you have the momentum, you feel like you have the inertia and the firepower to be able to hold your own. But it didn't matter in the eyes of the committee. Georgia, unfortunately, they just lost a game at the wrong time. It's better to lose early in the season than lose late. And that's kind of where you sit with Alabama. That's kind of where you sit with Texas. Texas lost in early October. Alabama lost in early September. Those losses were eventually ratified by the wins and the style of wins that they got. And then Michigan handled business against everybody. And Washington, they were probably the most adverse team of all the undefeateds because nobody believed in them. Nobody. Yours truly was the only person from July until literally last Thursday night to say Washington is the best team in the Pac-12. And I was doubting Thomas. I caved. I thought Oregon finally had it. I thought Oregon was finally going to get their number, and they didn't. So you can't say, nope, they don't belong. There was an argument for all 6 teams. And if you really wanted to throw in Ohio State, yeah, they handled business against everybody except the one team, and they lost by less than a touchdown. I don't know how you justifiably say that's a bad loss. In fact, you can make an argument that between them and Georgia, they have the 2 best losses of all time in the history of the college football playoff era of the 4-team system. And the good news is that we won't have to worry about this next year, where Florida State will do its job. Florida State will punch its ticket to the CFP, and Alabama's probably going to get that number 5 spot over the number 4 spot. And the good news is for them, it's basically a tune-up game because they would have been playing Liberty this year. Liberty would have gotten in. They would have traveled down to Bryant-Denny Stadium. And by, I would say, midway through the 3rd quarter, you're playing your second team. And you're getting prepared to face off against Florida State. And then we actually have that conversation of, all right, who really belonged in that number 4 spot? But we didn't get that this year. And it's a huge testament, I think, to the ACC. If I'm Mike Norvell, I'm livid. I'm absolutely livid right now. Because if I realize that the ACC once again failed me. The ACC once again failed this conference, and they did nothing to help benefit us and put us over the top. And this is where the conversations begin about expansion when it comes to conferences. This is why you've heard rumors about Florida State wanting to duck out of the ACC and join the SEC because of the brand of the SEC carried weight. Now, let's go ahead and actually break down all 4 teams that did make the CFP. Then we'll talk about Georgia. Then we'll talk about Florida State or Michigan. Best team in college football based off of record. Best team in college football based off of style of play. Best team in college football based off of margin of victory. They handled business last night. Even though it was a little bit lackadaisical at times, they still have one of the best rushing attacks in college football. They have one of the best offensive lines in the country. They've handled business, and they've dismantled everybody, even in a close game against Maryland, even when they had to fight back against Ohio State. You kind of planned for that. You kind of sat down and said, these are games that we have circled on our calendar. One's a look-ahead game. One is the game. And they won both. And then they were able to beat up on a really good defense in Indianapolis. They've earned the spot for the number one. Number two is Washington. Washington has the most ranked wins in college football. There's your argument. It's done. That's it. Like, it's done after that. And I think that was really important about Washington was every chance that somebody decided to doubt them at one spot. Guess what happened? They decided to say, nope, we're going to actually do that specifically. Utah game. Everyone said that their defense wasn't going to be able to hold against the rushing attack. It was an 11-0 shutout in the second half. The passing attack in the rain against Oregon State. They're going to have to run the football because if the weather is just going to be too harsh. Ramadunze gets open for a 32-yard touchdown, and then on 3rd and 3, you go ahead and you connect with him again. Number one receiver all season. Number one reason why you're moving on to the Pac-12 championship. And then everyone wants to talk about the rushing attack, and everyone says, oh, well, you got to only win through the air against USC. Well, you had Dylan Johnson rush for 243 yards against this very tumultuous, downtrodden Trojan defense. And then he once again put up nearly over 100 yards against Oregon, a very good run defense. And Oregon, they had their moments. Oregon gained momentum, but Washington responded. And Washington has quality wins over Arizona, over Utah, over USC, Oregon twice. That's 5. And then if you include Oregon State, who is ranked, that's 6. You can take out USC for the ranked and put in Arizona, and they still have 5 ranked wins. It's not that hard. They're not a team that sat down and said a million times, we're only going to win because of our passing attack. And also, would anybody really have an argument about this if Jalen McMillan was healthy the entire season? Like, McMillan was out really from week 3 until roughly the Apple Cup. He was a little bit active against Oregon State, but nothing to write home about. Then he gets back in, and Michael Penix Jr. finally says, I don't have number 1. Fine, I'll double down and get to number 11. And they did. And they were able to throttle an Oregon defense that really has been fundamentally sound all season long. So tip of the hat to them. I picked them at the start of the year to win the Pac-12. I thought that they were going to be bound for the playoff. And they gave us a show. They really did. They gave us everything that we were looking for in terms of a final performance in the Pac-12 title game. This was exactly what you want to see if you were a college football aficionado. Great play, great back and forth momentum, inertia going to each sideline. You saw a moment to where it was time for them to capitalize, and they did. And they did it time and time and time again. Washington is a team of resilience, but they're a team of honor and poise. And that is why they are going to the college football playoff. Texas has the head-to-head win over Alabama. Enough said. They did their job. Texas handled business against everybody that they played. And yes, did they nearly Texas a few times? Absolutely. Was the fourth quarter comeback against TCU impressive? Yeah. Was Kansas State supposed to hang around as long as they did? No. Was a Houston team supposed to be able to get that 4th down conversion? Probably. But Texas found a way to win. And Texas's only loss came in a rival game at a neutral site location. So when you argue the neutral site conversation, you say to yourself, well, how can we justifiably leave them out when another team, like a Georgia, lost at a neutral site location? How can we leave that? How can we put Georgia in at that point? You can't. So you threw that notion out of there. You also put the rivalry intact with it. So no problem whatsoever. And Texas at the end of the season was hitting its stride at the right time. Everyone stepped up. The way that yesterday's game went, in my personal opinion, and the way that I described it, was Quinn Ewers had basically the Fantastic Four as his wide receiver core. They had the thing, it was clobber in time, which is Tavion Sanders. The Human Torch was Xavier Worthy because if he's fast and fiery as all hell. You had a good number 3 receiver in Miss Invisible, but basically it was Mr. Invisible with Adonai Mitchell because he slipped and slid his way through defensive lines and was able to find open fields to get in the end zone. And then you had to go with Mr. Reliable, Mr. Fantastic, Jordan Whittington, who's been Mr. Fantastic of a leader in the locker room for all season long. That was what Texas had at its disposal. And Quinn Ewers made history, and Quinn Ewers sliced and diced this Pokes defense, and the defense of Texas did its damn job. Ollie Gordon did not rush for over 100 yards. That's only happened 3 times this year, and once was against UCF. They basically forced Alan Bowman to have to throw it, and things did not go pretty. Yeah, I would say Oklahoma State's receivers definitely lived up to the types. Owens played really well. Brennan Presley played really well. But you also saw the capitalization when there were moments for Texas to go ahead and swing the momentum back to them. They took advantage, and they never slowed down. Texas, great rushing attack, even though they don't have Jonathan Brooks. Passing attack was on point. And even if you don't have Xavier Worthy, here was the playoff committee's conversation. They don't have a star receiver, but they have 3 other receivers that finish with over 30 catches, each average over 15 yards per play, and they all found ways to the end zone. Yeah, they're going to be pretty good. They're going to figure it out if they don't have number 1 on the field. Oh, by the way, Jonte Cook, the superstar that's going to be there next year, yeah, he's a pretty damn good replacement too. So there's really no argument for Texas. The culture has changed. The personality has changed. And Texas as a whole, let me just make this clear. Texas as a whole has had really good teams in years past. They've had great rosters, and they've done an exceptional job of winning on the recruiting trail because that burnt orange burns bright in the Lone Star State. Everybody knows about the brand of Texas. They haven't had a culture, and they haven't had a good coaching staff. They've never been this well coached. They've never been this well prepared, and that's a testament to what Steve Sarkisian implemented. The good news is, and I hate to say it to a lot of people who are tired of hearing his name, but when you go through the Nick Saban Rehabilitation Clinic, you come out on the other side stronger. Look at every coach who has now found their second shot in the NFL or in the college football playoff realm or in college football in general. You've never seen a 10-win season at Ole Miss until Lane Kiffin got there. Yet Butch Jones turned Arkansas State slightly around this past year. And the biggest part of Steve Sarkisian, his humility to be willing to take an unpaid or a very minuscule paid analyst job just to earn the respect of Nick Saban. He got that. He implemented a similar system down in Austin, and Texas is ready to compete for a college football playoff spot for years to come. Big 12 or SEC, they are deserving. They did their job, and they have the head-to-head over Alabama. And now comes Alabama. Alabama is Thanos. They are inevitable. You can knock them down. You can't knock them out. So long as Nick Saban is walking that sideline, you cannot count out the Crimson Tide. It will not happen. It cannot happen because if you do not understand how well prepared he has his team every single week. That week 2 loss to Texas was the final wake-up call that team was going to get this year. They got walked into that locker room, and I can tell you just based off of seeing this team and how they've been prepared, Nick Saban let him have it. He let him have it throughout the week. He was tired. He was not going to play nice. And then you play that South Florida game, and they realized we have to trust Jalen Milroe. And the biggest thing about Nick Saban that allows him to stay in control and the king of college football that everybody wants to say, when is it time for him to go? When he stops adapting. When he stops finally willing to make changes and says, my way is the best way, and the game passes him. But he doesn't do that. What Nick Saban does is he implements offensive systems or defensive formations that play to his strengths, and he doesn't allow the weakness of his team to hold him back. He embraces the fatalities. He embraces the flaws, and he says, I'm going to make them better. I'm going to find a way to make this a strength for us. And once again, he did so. Realized Jalen Milroe was limited in the passing attack. It's either a strikeout or a home run. Fine, play it to your strengths. Knows that he has got his legs, knows he can run the football extremely well, knows he's a physical guy to bring down in the open field. Fine. Quarterback runs, quarterback designs, stay upright, and let's go ahead and see how this thing works. And anybody out there that wants to say, well, the Iron Bowl, the Iron Bowl was played in Jordan-Hare Stadium, where I truly believe a shaman man is buried underneath that stadium because voodoo weird shit happens all the time there. The kick six, Bo Nix won a football game, overtime matchup against a Heisman Trophy winner in Bryce Young. It's a pattern. And 4th and 31 happened, and Jalen Milroe found a way to survive. Alabama found a way to survive. And then they go play in Atlanta yesterday, and the score won't say it, but Alabama dominated. Alabama had Georgia in the blender on multiple occasions. If not for a few dropped interceptions, that score would have been higher or would have been lower on Georgia's side. They didn't capitalize on every single opportunity they had, but that was a team that showed you in front of the nation for the final time on CBS, hey, don't even say that we're not good enough. That was potentially the national championship because Alabama right now is rolling. Alabama right now has the grit, and Alabama has time. I don't think enough people are understanding Nick Saban has a month to prepare. Nick Saban has literally 28 days to get ready for Michigan. He is going to watch every bit of film from years ago. He's going to see every single snap. He is going to see exactly where the flaws are, and he will have his team ready. That's a problem. If you are Michigan, you may be excited that you're the number 1 seed, but holy crap, in the same breath, you're saying he has a month. He has a month to get this team ready. And maybe they win. And maybe this is the year where Michigan finally comes out on top. I picked Michigan at the start of the year to win the whole thing as Jim Harbaugh gets his swan song to be able to go finally play in the NFL because he's going to get an opportunity. You just saw Sharon Moore, what he was able to do as the head coach. He's the guy in waiting. It's going to be a 30-second interview. Hey, knock over next door. This is your new office. But maybe Alabama does it. Because Alabama, this team, it's the best coaching job I've ever seen of Nick Saban in his career. And he earned the right. Now, Florida State. Florida State is the reason why the College Football Playoff Committee is flawed. I'm going to stand by that. I understand why Florida State is not in. But I also understand why Florida State should be getting ready to march to Grapevine, Texas, and basically dismantle the committee. I understand why they want to make this 1800s where they're going to get the guillotine out and just slice the heads off. And if I am a member of the playoff committee, I am in hiding. I am not answering my phone from anybody. I am literally going underground and not coming out until after the playoff is settled. Because Florida State did its job. Florida State played the games. Florida State did everything asked of them throughout the season. Florida State never once faltered or fell apart. They played down to their schedule at times. The Boston College game, you can't take that away. That was a close call. It shouldn't have been. They were overlooking for Clemson the next week. They played down to their level against Florida. They definitely looked lackluster last night in Charlotte, but they did their job. And Florida State has earned the right because of that defense. The one thing that we talked about on this show, the one thing that we talked about multiple times was that Florida State, no matter what, had to have other players step up. They needed everyone else around them to be a factor and to factor in to their success. No more Jordan Travis. Okay, Trey Benson, you're starting to run crazy. Tafuli, when you are on the field, go let it run rampant. Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Jaheim Bell, you get an opportunity to get the open field, you take it and you bully these sons of bitches. That was the key. Defensively, we need you to step up. You can't allow Tate Rodemaker to only have a couple of seconds to throw. We can't just get a couple 3-and-outs. You need to get as many opportunities for our offense to score. And they did last night. They held Jack Plummer to under 120 passing yards. They had no touchdowns allowed. This was a rushing attack led by Isaac Arenado and Jawar Jordan that averaged less than 3.3 yards per play. Their defense got in the backfield. They feasted, they ate, and they dominated against a Louisville team that was averaging 33 points going into this game. So go ahead and tell me in one breath, yeah, they looked rough and they were rocky, but why are we playing the games? Why are we going out there if we know that we don't stand a shot? And in my opinion, it's all based off of the committee and it's all based off of the conferences. The conferences really play a big deal in this. And this is why now you're understanding Florida State's reasoning to want to leave. Eventually, we're not going to have to worry about this because if I do think we will have one giant college football conference that just dictates how it's all done. 60 teams, the 60 best, and then we're going to have another FBS level, which is basically the group of 5. They'll play for a championship, and you'll have a championship here. And that's what it's going to be at some point. And next year, all we're going to do is look at standings. We're not going to look at rankings. Standings. It's all about seeding. It's all about, oh, well, Georgia lost, so they're still one of the better teams. We'll put them at number 6. Louisville, they didn't win, so they're now out. Liberty's undefeated. They're automatically in the 12th spot. Alabama, okay, well, they're a conference champion, but they didn't go undefeated. They're at number 5. Ole Miss and Penn State, now we have an argument for number 10. That's what it's going to be next year. But this year, it was all about getting it right. And from a TV product standpoint, I think the committee factored that in. I think last night when they watched as Florida State's offense was anemic outside of a few breakaway plays, and they realized they're going to be in the number 4 spot. They realized that at this point, you can't put them at number 3, so you got to put them at number 4. Is this offense going to be able to do anything against Michigan? No? Okay, we're going to lose viewership. We're going to lose boosters. We're going to lose ratings. It's going to be a terrible game. Alabama's offense can do something, and Alabama's defense can shut down Blake Corum. It can shut down Donovan Edwards, and it can get in the backfield and terrorize J.J. McCarthy. It's going to happen. We can't leave him out. I also think that the way that the games were played a major staple in this. Think about it for a second. Dismantling in Arlington, Alabama really controlled the tempo, and they handled themselves through 4 quarters against the number 1 team in the country on a 29-game win streak. Michigan wasn't pretty, but they still found a way to win by 26. And then you had Washington. Washington came back. They fought. they clawed, and they never doubted themselves. They didn't even throw a watch party. That's how secure they were. They said at the start of the year, we're going to be in the playoff. And I believe them, and a lot of other people did too. It's crazy to think that this is a year where we actually need 8 teams. But I'm going to say what I think a lot of people are saying. It was always right to have 8. I think of the playoff committee, when they had this meeting last year, because never forget, last year there was a conversation, do we expand early from the 14 to the 12 team? And they decided no. Bob Bowlesby said no. Jack Schwarbeck said no. Greg Sankey said no. Jim Phillips said no. A couple of other people that were involved in the committee process, they all said no. They were content with 4 teams. Those 4 teams may not be the proper teams because the way the game on the field was played. But were they the 4 best teams? I think you have a very hard argument to go ahead against it. I really do. I think when you look at Alabama, when you look at Texas, when you look at Florida State, when you look at Georgia, when you look at Michigan, and when you look at Washington, there's one thing separating a couple of them. And basically at the end of the day, right, wrong, indifferent, based off of how the on-field play was. And that was a key element. The top 4 teams were the right teams. You can hate it, but I think it was right. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.